share in case.
Okay.
Of course.
All right, Sharon, maybe we'll start with you guys. What did you guys talk about? Sort of what was kind of the overarching theme of what you guys were discussing outside?
Yeah, you know, there were two topics that we went pretty deep in that I thought were really interesting. The first is just the rise of mobile and how to capitalize on the mobile traffic that retailers are getting. And the second is really about customer segmentation. So one of the really interesting points that one of the individuals made was they really think about traffic from different channels and how they behave when they land on a retailer site very differently. So email traffic is maybe less likely to convert on a mobile device, but traffic from social networks like Facebook, Twitter, and then networks like ours, Pinterest, are actually have a higher likelihood of converting online. And so just thinking through customer segmentation and then how you optimize a landing experience to make sure that you're providing that intended customer with the thing that they're looking for based on where they're coming from, I thought was really interesting. And then the second was, how do you remove some of the friction around a mobile experience when conversion is of tantamount importance? And so one of the things that we've seen, because 75% of the traffic on Pinterest is mobile, and much of that traffic is actually clicking out to a retailer site to learn more about a content or a product. The conversion, the checkout experience on mobile can be difficult. So looking at it as a sales generation channel, like via email capture, and then later remarketing to that user actually works pretty well.
Yeah. And earlier when we were chatting with Arnie, we were asking kind of, Polyvore versus Pinterest. What is the difference, and how would you characterize it? How would you characterize sort of the difference between? Because a lot of people will say images, a lot of fashion. It's very similar. And
Yeah.
I think you mentioned it like inspiration versus buying. How would you sort of? Is that how you'd characterize it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the experience that we're trying to create for our users, what we call our pinners, is really this notion of discover, save, and do. So every day, more than 70 million people are coming to Pinterest to find discovery. And that's against a very broad spectrum of different kinds of categories. Everything from, travel to home decor to fashion to food. And what inspires that use is really, typically planning for a very important moment in your life. Sometimes that means getting married. Sometimes that means planning for a large home remodel. And so what they're doing is they're discovering all that content is they're also saving it for later, right? Saving it for a project, saving it to return for when they're ready to take ultimately action on that. And action can mean a purchase. It can also just mean learning more by reading that content. In some cases for me, it's also going and do those things in real life. So one of my favorite examples is, I discovered a pair of shoes from Nordstrom on my Pinterest account, and actually didn't convert online because I wanted to go in the store and try them on first. And we see that behavior all the time. My husband and I live in San Francisco, and there are a lot of things to do in San Francisco. So we actually have a board together of things that we want to do in the city and take advantage of while we're still living there. So I would say for us, it's really a broad spectrum of applicability in terms of how people use Pinterest everywhere in their lives.
Yeah. What is your pitch to retailers? I mean, let's talk about sort of what came out of your reports, customer collaboration. What was sort of the big theme that you guys were talking about?
Well, I think there were just particular examples that we were both surprised by just how specific the final execution would look like. And in truth, being inspired during the discussion and using that to shape what the final product ended up being. And I think it's basically, you can summarize it in that there are all these services that we're comfortable putting on the menu at any given time, but there are also capabilities that perhaps we're either developing or we're about to release, and working with customers at different times and finding the right, the perfect marriage of service or product and instance of need together can really give rise to beautiful things. And I was talking to a couple guys from iView based out of New York, and there's the imaging technology that their company's based around, and being able to drive specific marketing campaigns fluidly, regionally based on different customer heuristics and data, and do that on the fly. And then on our end, being able to build very quick product and deliver it to customer in very short intervals, and seeing kind of the empowering nature of that. That was kind of where the discussion centered around.
What is the biggest challenge of doing that? What is the hardest part?
Well, I think there's the mistake of trying to be everything to everyone. I think the use cases are going to vary and just end up not just in line with product diversity, but there are countless things people could need to use your services for. And I think that it can kind of dilute focus at times. What do you want to be the best at? What do you want to continue to invest in and improve on versus, where do you want to participate in general? And are you comfortable walking away from certain things saying, no, that's not what we do? And perhaps there's someone else out there that does, and kind of building the rigor and the discipline to be able to make those decisions when they arise.
Yeah, absolutely. Aubrey, what about you? What's kind of the big thing? Customization, obviously, a big part of your...
Yeah, we definitely talked a lot about customization. We got into sort of talking about the merchandising mix and how merchants can think about it. So we talk about how to get merchants on board with sort of the choice architecture that we were talking a little bit about, and talking about also the fact that because you're still e-commerce, a lot of people still buy what you merchandise. So figuring out that mix of sort of inventory versus just-in-time manufacturing was something we talked a lot about. Because if we merchandise a gold digger shirt, like women are going to buy that more than people who are iterating. So we talked about merchandising. We talked about UI. So similar to, if someone comes to our site, they'll be inspired by things that we merchandise. That same demographic of women are also the women who want the easiest process online from a UI and UX perspective. So designing that for sort of like the lowest common denominator is really important. And so we were talking about the difference between how do you design for lowest common denominator versus the power users who are like the 10 or 20%. I'm sure with your platforms it's the same, where it's like they want all the tools, all the options. And so how do you strike that balance? So we talked a lot about that too, and I'm sure that's a challenge for a lot of people.
And Arnie, that's kind of an interesting thing with Polyvore, because you go on there and there's so many choices, and I think we talked about this a lot when we met a couple months ago, and you said they're the power users who kind of know the ins and outs, they know how to search for everything, and there's people who are the first timers. How do you kind of deal with the sort of the user designed experience so that everybody is happy?
It's funny what you just said, because this morning somebody sent me a set on Polyvore, which was actually a bunch of product requests in a set.
Oh, funny.
And they were like, do this in the editor, put this, I'd like to be able to search with 2 colors. And they actually made it into a set, which was amazing, because it was like,
oh, wow.
Just give this to the product team, we'll build it. So, I mean, that kind of, when that happens, that's obviously amazing. I think in any business, you're always going to have people that use your product a lot, people that don't. And you always got to assume when someone comes to you for the first time, they're in that second group. And so you just have to think about onboarding, and it's like getting to know somebody. You don't tell them everything about you day one. You pick like the one thing that's most important, that you think is going to be most important to them. And you want to try and learn what they care about. So on Polyvore, we try and learn very quickly what styles you're interested in, based on what you search for or based on what you save and whatever. And then we use our personalization engine to recommend you more products like that. And then we try and get you to actually express yourself and create outfits, and then to create them, get feedback, and to start sharing. And so then suddenly you become a power user, and you didn't even know you became a power user. It's just like building a great friendship with someone. One day you wake up and you're like, oh, we're really good friends.
Oh, it's nice, warm and fuzzy. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to summarize the themes of the conference, but thank you so much for leading out these breakout reports. I know everybody liked them.
Thanks.
Thanks.